Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to YRBiz webinar series. My name is Karen Dubois, and I'm your MC for today. Our topic is mental wellness and the workplace, and we've got a great lineup of speakers. We're very honored to have them with us today. And to kick things off, I'd like to ask Charles Banfield from the Regional Municipality of York to do some words of welcome. Charles, over to you.
All right, thank you, Karen, and hello, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. As Karen said, my name is Charles Banfield, and I'm the Manager of Strategic Economic Initiatives at the Regional Municipality of York. So today's event is the 7th in a series of webinars that are designed to provide a roadmap to post-COVID economic recovery. And these webinars provide information and resources that can help businesses navigate the current economic environment and to make the necessary adjustments to their operations to enable them to thrive in a post-pandemic economy. So with the ever-present uncertainty and stress resulting from the COVID-19 outbreak, mental health has become a top priority for an ever-increasing portion of the population. Today's session will delve into the issues associated with addressing mental health in the workplace and will provide much needed insights and guidance for employers across all sectors of the economy. I wish to thank the Newmarket and Vaughan Chambers of Commerce and the York Region Business Coalition, who continue to partner with us to develop and deliver this webinar series. And I'd also like to extend a special thank you to today's presenters, including the Honorable Michael Tebolo, Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and to Karen Dubois for organizing this event today. So thank you all once again for joining us, and over to you, Karen.
Thanks so much, Charles. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a few housekeeping details. We are recording this session, so if you want to have copies of the presenter materials, we will be sending out a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording as well as the presenter materials. So just enjoy the session. You can always catch any specifics that you want to follow up with on the recording. We also have both the chat and the Q&A function open. We encourage you to use them throughout. We will be doing a brokered Q&A with our speakers towards the end of the session, but please feel free to use those interactive channels throughout the session. And with that, we'd like to kick it off. We're very honored, as Charles said, to have the Associate Minister of Mental Wellness and Addictions, the Honorable Michael Tebolo, with us. So, Minister, I hand it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Karen, and good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be here this morning and speak to you about mental health, mental wellness, as Karen said. I much prefer that term. And addictions in the province of Ontario, and what our government is doing to put together a strategy, a plan for it in the province, and of course dealing with as well COVID-19 and the added pressures that have resulted from the pandemic. As you may know, in March of this year, we announced the Roadmap to Wellness, the plan for mental health and addictions strategy for the province. And in that document, we outlined the important aspects of looking at the needs of individuals based on a client-centered approach. What that in effect means is that we look at the lifespan and the needs of individuals under the age of 12, from 12 to 24, 24 to 45, 45 to 65, and our seniors 65 and over. We look as well as trying to deliver supports on a step care basis so that within our communities, we provide the maximum amount of supports within the community as opposed to having people have to come from different parts of the province to seek help in centers around the province. That's an important part of the plan because we know that the best results are when the delivery of the services takes place within the community where it lives. In addition to that, we're very keen on ensuring that the supports that are being provided are culturally sensitive to the needs of the individual. So in this case, we look specifically at the Francophone community, the Black community. We look at the LGBTQ2 community. We look at all the different communities that make up the province of Ontario because the needs of those communities wherever they happen to be across the lifespan, are going to be different. So if we're going to have a client-based system that looks after the needs of the individuals, we have to make sure that the services are being delivered in a culturally sensitive way. Now, we know in the province that over 2 million people each year seek help from their doctors for mental health issues and for addictions. So there's a significant amount of work that needs to be done. And to get that job done, we need people trained to be able to provide those supports and services, as well as looking for ways to provide the services in new manners so that there is, in fact, supports for individuals. So one of the things I'm proud to have seen happen is the development of ICBT as a delivery system for individuals across the province. So if you are fortunate enough to have internet broadband in your community, there's the ability to access these supports and services. We know they work well. We, as one of the programs within the Roadmap to Wellness, we talked about structured psychotherapy and incorporating that in through OHIP to provide supports to individuals. This is face-to-face supports. And when I was in England at the London School of Economics, where the professors that developed the strategy for England work and do their research, I asked them one question, what would you do differently today that you couldn't have done 13 years ago? And they commented about the importance of internet-based support services. Of course, COVID has forced us to expedite the development of that system. And I can say to you that we've actually, we allocated money for this specifically, and we've actually burned through that because of the number of people that have actually subscribed to it, which I believe is a good thing, because it means that these individuals, because it's confidential, because it's online, it provides them the opportunity to get supports that they need. The other good news about the program is that it started off to be for anxiety and depression, mild to moderate. We're now finding that individuals with acute anxiety and depression, as well as PTSD, are using the system, and it's actually become useful in helping them, deal with the specific issues they have. And I guess I'm saying all of this because it's really important to understand the frontline workers and the people in the province that the small businesses that were considered essential services, that opened up their doors, that continued working through the difficult times from March, and what we're seeing happening as well now. They're in a very important role from the standpoint of being able to provide calm and to provide stability. And we want to do everything we can to assist individuals on the front lines doing the work every day, keeping their doors open and keeping people calm with respect to the supply chain and just being there, because again, a lot of people don't think about this, but I keep on referring to the shopkeepers and to our clergy as sources of therapy for individuals. We're social animals, we're social beings. We need to see, we need to have contact. And that's one of the reasons why I always talk about physical distancing. I really don't like to talk about social distancing, because we have to maintain the connections between people if we want to get through this and get to the other side. So we can still physically distance, but we have to maintain those social connections. It's so important. What we've tried to do as a government is find ways to deliver services during this difficult time in a virtual way. Could we do better? Could we move faster? Absolutely. We've made investments now. The first go around, I believe, was about $12 million. We've invested another $14.75 million just a couple of weeks ago. I was in Sudbury to make those announcements. And the money is being put into the virtual supports for cognitive behavioral therapy. They're being put into, funding is being put, another $7 million is being put into face-to-face supports for individuals as well that are community-based. From our standpoint, what we need to do is ensure that the supports are there. Now, small businesses is an interesting group of individuals that need to have, again, specific supports because of the needs that they have. An entrepreneur usually spends all of their time in their business. An entrepreneur has other commitments as well, and there are more women now entrepreneurs, and statistics are showing us that the highest rate of anxiety and depression is not amongst men, but actually amongst women. It's over 70%, I believe, 74% last study that I saw. And that's really because of the fact that they're running businesses, they are running a household, they typically are the teachers to their children, they're the parents to their children, they have a spouse or a partner that they're living with. So the amount of stress that comes on them is exponentially higher than it is on the men, and we're seeing that we need to do more to support women. Now we have programs that are available through Ontario.ca/coronavirus, or supports for children. We've seen 3 times as many calls to kids, the kids helpline, prior to the pandemic. We're seeing the utilization of programs like Bounce Back. We're also interested in trying to support entrepreneurs with different programs that are available to our frontline workers that are specifically built for frontline workers. And we're trying to deal with the issue of the stigma associated with mental health. We still have a lot of people that refuse to get help or are going it alone, and we can't do that. We need to continue to let people know that there are supports out there for you. They are free of charge. The government has put them in place for the reasons that I've mentioned. We know that there are problems and we're trying to deal with them. So from our standpoint, we created a mental health command table that informs both the economic table and the health table to ensure that we see where trends are going. I wish today I could report to you that we've got COVID-19 under control. We're concerned that our numbers will double every 10 days, and I'm sure you've seen some of the modeling, which could put us in a situation that is similar to or worse than when we first started. And we talk in mental health, we always talk about the 4th wave. In a lot of ways, we're preparing for what is going to come as a result of the 2nd and the 3rd wave of COVID-19. I'm concerned, as would anyone who deals with mental health and addictions, that our suicide rates are going to continue to rise, that we're going to have more people suffering from trauma that's been caused by the pandemic, and how we work through that complex trauma, especially when it comes to our kids, to provide them supports as well. So, if we're talking about small businesses and we're talking about the individuals running the businesses, they all have children, or most of them do. And if they don't have children, they have grandchildren. The impact on the family as a result of the COVID-19 and the isolation, the separation, we're seeing that in a lot of the seniors, their isolation is becoming depression and anxiety, and needing to do more in that area. We're all tied together. So when we talk about doing more from the standpoint of the small businesses and providing supports to small businesses, we have to remember that they're people, we're all people, and we have those social connections behind the scene that need to be addressed as well. So I urge everyone to go to our website and look at the different services that are available. There are still some services that are face-to-face that are available. There are a lot of virtual supports. They do work. The statistics are showing us that the resolution rates are in excess of 70% with ICBT. And we're seeing, in addition to that, 15% of the population is reporting that they're feeling better as a result of having done the program online. So there's a lot of things that we can do there. And again, meetings like this today are very important because it allows us to communicate the message of hope. And that is what, I'm really, I'm going to conclude on that there is hope, that there is the possibility of gaining strength through talking about the different issues that are facing you. It's not an easy time. We recognize the impact that COVID is having on small businesses. We're doing everything in our power to not close down the economy, but rather target aspects of it so that we can ensure that the economy at least is able to percolate enough to keep it going forward. We have big concerns about our restaurants and what a shutdown could potentially move into a lockdown again. But we also have to communicate to the young people, and there's a lot of young people under 40 on this call. I can see that, we're not invincible, and we've got to think about what the repercussions are of the times that we're out in groups where we're not particularly careful. And I'm not suggesting that that's what the majority of people are doing, but the numbers in the last week have shown that people under the age of 40 have accounted for at least 60% of the new COVID cases. So what I want to do is make sure that everyone understands that this is within our control to ensure that we stop the spread of COVID. It's within our control to ensure that economy keeps going forward, but we have to maintain that physical distancing. We have to, wherever possible, wear the masks. We know they work. I heard a good analogy this morning that we've had the masks around for the longest time. So in use in medicine, that to even question the benefit of having a mask is really unacceptable, given the fact that there's so much evidence that supports the benefit of using a mask, not necessarily for yourself, but for the person that you're sitting with. And again, we're trying the best possible to contain the COVID-19 to younger people by keeping our most vulnerable populations protected. But we're also seeing that it's starting to spill into those populations, which is of concern to us, given the fact that it'll impact on the capacity of our hospitals, which ultimately could lead us to a situation like Italy of having to decide who gets a ventilator and who doesn't. And I'd hate to be the doctor having to make that decision. And we certainly don't want to go down that road, because all of us have parents, all of us, some of us still have grandparents. And it's really important that we remember that we're doing this not for us, but for the other generations that preceded us. So I'd like to end on that if I can. I'd like to answer some questions, but I want to thank the chambers, the Economic Development Office, Small Business Enterprise Centers for putting this on, for taking and being courageous enough to get us all engaged in talking about a topic that is critical to the success of the province economically and from a health standpoint. And stay strong, stay focused. If you need to talk to someone, there are lots of people to talk to throughout the province. And worst case scenario, reach out to my office if there's anything that we can do to assist with any of the issues that you have to deal with on a daily basis. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Tebolo. Those were very wise words, and both a little bit sobering, but as you said, also hopeful. And it's wonderful to see that the province is taking advantage of the information channels available to really accelerate the program rollout. So thank you for sharing that. For our attendees, if you have any questions for Minister Tebolo, please use the chat or Q&A function. And we will circle back to that. But just to keep moving, I'd like to ask our next speaker, Ashley Chaloner, who's the Senior Vice President of Policy for the Ontario Chambers of Commerce, to share the work that the OCC is doing. They have been tracking this issue of mental wellness and the workplace for quite some time, and actually have some fantastic resources available. So I'm really excited to have Ashley with us today to share what the OCC is doing. And as the Minister pointed out, the role that businesses play is so important to keeping our society functional and open and keeping people provided with the essentials that they need. So we really appreciate all the work that the OCC and the chambers are doing. Ashley, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to share some of the work that we've done and talk a little bit about our toolkit for employers that we wrote back in 2017. But first, I want to start by setting the stage a little bit. Many of you have probably seen some of these statistics. So these are stats about mental health in Canadian workplaces pre-COVID-19. So they were already fairly sobering. I think we all knew, or we'd all heard the stat about how mental illness costs the Canadian economy $51 billion per year. And it's been estimated that it costs businesses about $1,500 per employee. We've also heard stats about how many Canadians were missing work because of mental health issues, estimated 500,000 every day. So these are, profoundly sobering thoughts or statistics. And so, when you think about mental health in the context of the workplace, it was already something that needed to be addressed. And then, of course, now with COVID, things have gotten so much more acute. So let me just talk a little bit about that COVID impact. So what probably shouldn't be a surprise is that a lot of the key stakeholders and experts in mental health have assessed COVID-19 as having a negative impact on Canadians' mental health. Canadians are worried about their jobs, about their finances. They're feeling socially isolated as well as physically isolated because of some of the restrictions and the emphasis on distancing. And so the kind of presumption is from experts like CAMH and the Canadian Mental Health Association that there will be long-term impacts on Canadians' mental health because of what's happened with COVID. And of course, this also means long-term implications for industry and for government. So there's been a little bit of survey work done on Canadians' mental health, but more so in the spring when the pandemic just started. And so, with these numbers, we're starting to see the trend of more Canadians reporting poor or fair mental health in May. And with that, as the minister mentioned, we saw that women were more likely to report these symptoms. Interestingly enough, we also saw in that survey that Canadians under 64 had higher rates of anxiety than those 65 plus. And so thinking about concerns with respect to job losses and the future of the economy and subsequent waves of the pandemic, it seems like the pandemic really is weighing heavier on workers. And that's something that I think all businesses and government should be concerned about. What I do want to note, though, is this data is all from the spring. So I think the StatsCan survey closed in mid-June. So we've had, a summer of the pandemic. We're going into the fall. And I think a lot of us have been feeling that our kind of mental surge capacity has reached its limit. We had all of this kind of adrenaline almost from the beginning of the pandemic, and we were, able to manage all of this change and all of these new challenges as best we could. And now I think there's a bit of fatigue, and I'm sure we've all had the experience of talking to someone on the phone or on a video call, and we start with a little bit of small talk. How are you doing? And you get that kind of pause, and then the person says, oh, and there's no kind of, there's no words, but I think we all understand exactly what we're saying, when we say those words or when we hear those words. We're all in that same kind of place. So this is absolutely something that we need to keep an eye on, and it should be a concern for not only our friends and family, but our fellow employees, our businesses and government. So not surprisingly, something else that Stats Canada found is an increased use of substances. And this is, I think really important to remember as well, that substance abuse and addiction is part of the mental health story, and certainly something that many employers know well with respect to how it can bleed into the workplace and impact healthy workplaces. So back in 2017, the OCC did a bit of survey work of our own. We wanted to understand what Ontario businesses thought about mental health in the workplace, what actions they were taking. And so our survey found a lot of really positive things. You know, most Ontario businesses understand that spending on employee health and wellness is a good investment. They agree that mental health is as important as physical health, and they understand that their organization's success is dependent upon their employees' health and well-being. However, we found that only 4 in 10 Ontario businesses had a formal strategy for employee health and well-being, and it probably won't surprise you to know that it was larger employees that were, or larger employers that were more likely to have those kinds of strategies and supports than smaller ones. So that for us, you know, we called that the mental health action gap, and that gave us a bit of direction in terms of where we wanted to go with our work, not only to better inform businesses as to what resources are out there, but also to look at how those resources were appropriate or not appropriate for small businesses. Because certainly when you have a small business, not only are resources tight, but often, you know, you have an entrepreneur or an owner operator who they themselves are carrying a lot of the burden, and their mental health really impacts the wellness of the entire organization as well. So some of the reasons why we think this is so important is related to why we asked kind of why businesses fail to take action on mental health. And some of the things that we found, you know, were kind of interesting. You know, we found that businesses were confused about their scope of responsibility and what they were legally responsible for. They were concerned about privacy of their employees. Of course, they were concerned about cost, both in terms of the cost of acting on mental health in the workplace, but also the cost of not acting. That was a source of confusion. And for many of them, they simply didn't know what to do or where to seek out resources. So it was just a matter of being very unsure about how to even go about starting to solve the mental health action gap. So there has been a survey done on this issue of employee support and engagement since COVID. Again, it was done in the spring, and it found, you know, not a bad result. 34% of respondents said that their employer had been supporting mental health, you know, poorly or inconsistently. So that's a small-ish number, but it's still a third of respondents, and that potentially represents a third of Canadian employees, and that's a lot of people who aren't getting the support they need from their employer. So clearly, you know, there's more work that needs to be done. You know, we know that employer support really is of utmost importance to mental health in the workplace, even more so now during the pandemic. So, you know, why should employers bother? Why is it important for them to promote mental wellness in the workplace? So, you know, we know that if not managed properly, mental illness and mental unwellness in the workplace can lead to a number of, excuse me, a number of negative outcomes. Increased rates of illness, absenteeism, presenteeism, which, if you haven't heard that word before, essentially means an employee is coming to work, they're showing up, but they are not very productive, they're struggling at work, or they're not getting anything done because of untreated mental and physical health issues. Other issues that can arise if mental health is not dealt with in the workplace: tension and conflicts between colleagues, deteriorating employee performance, reduced morale, and of course, the need for disciplinary action. All of these things are a problem for employers, and you know, all of these things come with potential serious consequences, whether it's financial or legal or just to the productivity of your workplace. So, you know, employers who promote and support their employees' physical and mental health, they stand to benefit. Taking action on mental wellness in the workplace increases productivity, reduces healthcare costs, helps employers attract and retain talent, among other benefits. And so for us at the OCC, you know, we think it's a real no-brainer to help our members and other businesses get serious about mental wellness. So one thing I do want to talk about as well, I've kind of laid out where we stand with some of the stats. I've talked about the benefits for employers, but what is a mentally healthy workplace? What does that actually mean? So I've got a definition here, and I won't go through each and every one, in the interest of time, but if you look at these, if you look at this list, you'll notice that it's a combination of both formal and informal things. So some of these, are a mental wellness strategy, whereas others are, having an open door policy and supportive relationships between employees and supervisors. So really part of creating a mentally healthy workplace is in fact the culture of the workplace, as well as the policies that govern the workplace. And so no matter the size of the organization, no matter the resources, there are things that you can do to promote a mentally healthy workplace that don't necessarily cost a lot of money or mean an outlay of resources or writing some grand strategy. There are a number of ways that you can make your your workplace mentally healthy that in fact aligns with this definition quite nicely. You might want to take a look at this list as well and think, how does this describe my workplace? Is this, are some of these things that we do or characteristics of our workplace? And how can we get closer to that ideal? So to answer the question of how, we put together this toolkit in 2017. It's available on our website, occ.ca. It's called Working Towards Mental Wellness, a toolkit for employers. And so, this really comes from our belief that the private sector has a leadership role to play in mental health in the workplace. This isn't just another issue where we can wait for government action, although government action and investment is certainly very important on mental health. But employers themselves can do a lot, and employees as well can do a lot to make their workplaces mentally healthy. Businesses can develop strategies, make investments, they can share best practices, and really contribute to that mentally healthy culture all on their own. So we released this toolkit. I encourage you to check it out. It goes through in more detail that case for action, why it's important from a legal perspective, from a business perspective, and of course from that very human perspective of why it's important to consider mental health in the workplace. There's also a ton of resources in it, and resources available on our website as well. One that I'll highlight for you right now is Mental Health Works from the Ontario branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association. They're the ones who came up with that great definition of a mentally healthy workplace, and they're really the experts. We've got a great toolkit, but they're the experts. Because this toolkit was released in 2017, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that it is having and that we know it's going to have in the long term on mental health in the workplace, we're going to be updating this toolkit in 2021. And so something to look forward to there. But in the meantime, I do encourage you to check it out, check out our website, and to visit the resources that we've listed therein. And that is all from me. I hope I stuck to my time, Karen.
Thanks so much, Ashley. That was really great. I love the mentally healthy workplace nomenclature, and I'd love to see that being picked up more by businesses as well. So we'll keep it moving. Again, please use the chat and the Q&A if you have any questions you'd like for follow-up with Ashley. Our next speaker is Chelsea Dowell, and Chelsea is a benefits advisor with Norbram, but also an expert with the Chamber Group Insurance Plan, which is certainly an amazing resource for small businesses that don't have their own formal HR and benefits programs. So that's one of the things the chambers across Canada have been very active in over the last number of years. So I'm going to ask Chelsea if you would like to present next on the Chamber Group Insurance Plan.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you everybody for joining us this morning. I feel like the lead-in from Ashley is an amazing lead-in. That was a great presentation in terms of wellness at work. And I feel like this just naturally fits in next. So what I'm going to talk about this morning is the importance of a EAP, an employee assistance program at work, which directly leads in from Ashley's conversation in terms of, 4 out of 10 employers don't have a plan in place, and this can really help support that. Again, this is a topic that I'm super passionate about, and having the tools to allow that is something that the Chamber Plan is providing for employers, which is amazing. I just love this quote from CMHC. Mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or own community. I know that we've spoken a lot this morning about the impacts that the pandemic has had on everybody. Ashley's adrenaline and fatigue really resonated with me because I can definitely relate to that, I feel like, and I feel like we all can, especially having those conversations, with people in terms of asking how they are. So I'm going to dive right into the Chamber's Employee Assistance Program and the EAP and what it entails. So if anybody has any questions, I want to, this can be super informal, but I know we're going to have a Q&A at the end, but feel free to post your questions in the chat box. So with an EAP program, it's an add-on. So it's an add-on to your group benefits program. The other thing I want to mention is there are services out there that, as an employer, if you don't have a group plan in place, that there are standalone EAPs for that support as well. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to help you. But the Chamber Plan has the add-on as an employee assistance program. It offers 12 hours of face-to-face professional counseling. Due to COVID, this is accessed online as well. And what I love to stress here about the counseling is that the YRBiz Employee Assistance Program does an amazing job guiding your employees to choose, the right person. Obviously, as people, we drive certain ways with certain people, and having the right counselor and person to talk to is so important for an employee to be successful in a program. So, the EAP program will discuss with the employee or person coming in for service, whether, maybe they're already working with somebody and they'll try to adapt to that person to see if they can continue to work with that person that they're comfortable with. So that's a portion of the EAP program that I really love to stress about. So that's 12 hours of face-to-face. There's nutritional, elder care, childcare guidance via phone, personal, legal, and financial assistance, 3 hours each. It's a completely confidential self-referral. You can share hours with your family, which not many people know about with EAP programs, which is really important. And one of the newer resources that has been grouped with the EAP is a critical incident stress debriefing service. So this is a really important service for most businesses, because if they have something critical happen, whether it's a loss of an employee, whether it is a stressful situation. I had a client last year, earlier this year, they have a branch in Nova Scotia and close to where the shootings happened. So we called the EAP service, got the critical debriefing stress in. It was during COVID, so we had to do it online, but that service is available. And again, to Ashley's point, implementing an EAP service gives you as an employer a resource to give to your employees. It's something that as an employer, you have to be aware of your employees. Right now, it's really hard because everybody or some organizations are working from home. So it's hard to know what's going on with your employees. But, as an employer, if you notice a change in productivity, an increased absenteeism, requests for leaves, presenteeism at work, so you're preoccupied and disengaged at work, a change in mood, loss of self-esteem, you're sleep deficient or decreased energy, evidence of substance abuse, change in physical appearance, emotional reactions, lack of interest on the job. So those are all things as an employer that you have to be aware of. And whether for small business, it's hard because everybody's wearing, you know, an employer's wearing one big hat. But if you have even an employee that maybe you designate to be that people navigator and have that connection with your employees to know what's going on and say, hey, I've noticed, you know, your work just hasn't been as it usually is. We have this EAP program available as a resource, you know, if you need help. So an EAP program, you know, it tackles that privacy issue because as an employer, you don't want to dive too much into what, you know, people are going through unless they're willing to share. But having an EAP program gives you that resource to provide to the employee. Say, hey, we have this service, you know, there's stuff going on in your life, whether we've heard or, you know, through the grapevine, through another employee, you know, it's here to utilize. So having the EAP program is that resource. The in-person counseling encompasses family challenges, work-related difficulties, personal problems, dependency concerns, and elder care issues, which everybody's experiencing right now, especially. Telephone counseling includes legal issues, financial struggles, childcare information, and nutritional counseling. Ashley had some really great statistics on how effective workplace wellness strategies can have an impact. And, you know, there's been a 12-month study done that having an EAP service in place, there's a reduction, a proven reduction in drug claims, which has a direct impact on your benefits program. It helps with returning to work, whether it's on, you know, a short-term leave or whether you had to lay your employees off and you're now bringing them back. It's going to help with that reintroduction and coming back to work. There is a 50% reduction in symptoms and an average of 70% improvement in productivity after accessing an EAP. So those are really hard statistics that are showing a huge impact in what an EAP has to offer. The other thing I wanted to go over today as well, that if you have a benefits program in place, you also have access to your practitioner coverage, depending on your benefit summary that you have and what you have included in your plan. But I wanted to highlight a few of the practitioners that are available that you can offer as a resource to your employees if you have them. So psychologist, social worker are typically involved in a group benefits plan and in all of our chamber packages. Nutritionist, because, you know, what you eat does have an impact on your mental health, and dietitian. So those are services available through the practitioner coverages in your group benefits program if you have one and are included with the chamber's plan. The other thing I wanted to address today, and the minister touched upon these services as well, and I really wanted, because for small business, you know, if having an EAP program maybe isn't something that's feasible right now, then there are amazing services that are offered with the government. So the CMHC has a, similar to what Ashley had talked about, but has also a workplace mental health playbook for leaders. So it's a great resource that you can download. You can just use that as a full guideline on how to implement mental wellness into your workplace. There is, obviously, we have the psychological health and safety in the workplace guide that everybody should be looking at as an employer and have something in place. And again, it gives you all of the steps necessary to implement that into your workplace. Connex Ontario is more of, you know, an employee referral. So if you don't have an EAP service, or even if you do, these are additional services to offer to your employees. So it's mental health and addiction support. Together All, which used to be branded The Big White Wall, is an online peer-to-peer support for mental health. So it's an anonymous program that you can, you know, speak online to other individuals going through the same things. And then the minister had talked about the Bounce Back Ontario, which is an amazing online CBT coaching program for treating depression and anxiety. So it takes employees and people through think it's about a 6 to 12 week program, you know, on, you know, changing your self-talk, changing your habits. And from the reviews of that program, it's an amazing successful program. The other thing that I love to give employers is, you know, another resource is the participation. So everything gets better when you move. So as an employer, you have access to, you know, a great resource, which is participation. And they have some really good challenges. I know October, they're doing a really good draw. So it's something that you can, you know, hop onto the website, and it just gives you as an employer some guidance as to some challenges to put into the workplace, especially when we are not physically together right now, maybe with employees working offsite or at home. It's really great to keep your employees engaged, and mental wellness starts with you as an employer. So, you know, participating in these, offering your employees the resources that they have, and communication about these products will make an employee feel like they're cared for, which goes a long way in terms of an employee's mental health. Wellness at work as well goes along with the chamber plan, has a wellness resource within the chamber's program. So all the employees, you know, on a chamber plan, again, if you're with another carrier for a group benefits plan, they also have it. So utilize what you have. These are always included in every group benefits package. Employees can hop online. They can look up wellness tips, you know, 11 strategies for eating healthy on a budget, articles on exercising. So there's a lot of free resources to take advantage of within the Chamber's group benefits plan. Another resource within the Chamber's plan is the business assistance service. So for owners, you have a resource. This is separate from an EAP, and this is actually included in every Chamber's package. So you have 3 hours of consultation for work-related problems, dependency problems, marital and family problems, and personal problems. So it's 3 hours of professional consulting. Sorry, I'm just, my battery is just giving me a warning. I'm just gonna plug in here.
The joys of technology.
I know. I didn't expect to work from home today, but my little guy has a runny nose, so I am at home.
There you go.
Okay, plugged in, sorry about that. So the BAS is actually embedded in the Chamber's program. So you have 3 hours of professional consulting that you can refer your employees to. Again, if you're noticing some changes with an employee, then it is a really great resource without getting into any privacy issues to direct your employees to. The Teladoc program is also included and embedded in the Chamber's plan. So you can use this, and the employees can utilize this as a wellness tool as well for your mental health. And it's online virtual doctor's appointments that you can get within an hour. You can schedule appointments online. You can do face-to-face consultations and talk to an actual doctor. And you know, if it's something that's an emergency, you can you're put into a waiting room, and I've been on there before, seen really quickly. So again, another resource that would be included in the Chamber's plan package. So that's it. So that's what I have for this morning. Thank you everybody so much for listening. This is such an important topic, especially right now. And I feel like this morning we've given a ton of resources as to what's available for employers and the statistics on the importance of, you know, having an employee wellness plan, action plan for your business.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chelsea. Wow, that was an amazing listing of resources. Thank you for sharing that with us. So we do have a few questions for our panelists. I want to start by asking each one of you individually, if there was one thing that you could recommend a business do right now, like one actionable thing that you'd like to see them do, what would it be? And maybe Minister Tabolo, I'll start with you.
Okay, good. I figured out how to unmute. I think the most important thing that we can do is ensure that we know how our staff is doing, or how and also how we're doing ourselves. One of the things I found interesting is that a lot of the service providers are constantly putting themselves out and looking at a lot of different things that they have to deal with every day, and they forget to look after themselves. So it's good to stop and say to the individual, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And get that person to express themselves. And that holds true for everybody, whether it's an employee, whether it's another business owner, like to pick up the phone, whether it's a supplier. I think it's important that we reach out to each other, because I think that inspires hope in all of us that we're going to get through this. So I'd say that social connection is the most important thing to keep hope alive in all of us, that we're going to get through this and we're going to live to see better days.
Great, thank you. Ashley, do you have your number one tip?
Absolutely. My number one tip is actually a question that that employers can ask themselves every day, which is, what am I doing to make a mentally healthy workplace? And so, maybe one day that is taking a couple minutes out of your lunch hour to check out some of the resources that that we've made available here. Maybe it's, as the minister suggested, checking in personally with your employees and seeing how they're doing. Maybe it's taking a few minutes out of your day to do something for your own mental health as well, and recognize that you can't carry the burden all on your own. And maybe it's figuring out a way to ensure that your team has open communications and is still socializing with each other, and still feels like a team even when they're separated. There's all kinds of fun activities you can do on Zoom, even if you're not all together. So keeping that question in mind and trying to apply that lens to the way that you manage your business and your employees, and little things every day can certainly to help to create that culture, even if you aren't able to do something really formal or make a big investment.
Great, thanks, Ashley. And Chelsea, your number one tip?
Yeah, and I'm going to mimic that as well. Communication is so key, especially during this pandemic. So checking in with your employees, offering them the resources, and acknowledging that we are all struggling in our own ways right now, and sending out, communication in terms of, these are the resources that we have available to you, whether it's through a group plan, whether it's through the free resources available through the Ontario government, and acknowledging that. Checking in goes a really long way with an employee, and noticing if somebody's struggling. So again, if that's not something that you're personally good at as a leader, ask somebody else to, an office manager or another employee that seems to be good at that, and have them do that communication piece. But communicating is definitely key right now.
Great. Also, another question for our panelists. When we initially went into the lockdown, it was sort of coming into spring. People were getting outside. Throughout the summer, we could be outside. Now, as we head into the fall, and we know that, the snow and the cold weather is just around the corner, are you concerned, or what are your concerns about, if we do have to go back to more restrictions, but not having the ability to step outside and just spend a couple hours in open air? So just wanted to get your thoughts about that, Minister Tebola.
Yeah, one of the things that we all know is that we're creatures of habit. And one of the things that happens when you disrupt routines is that you create chaos. So if we're going to be stuck having to be inside, we have to, again, go back to creating some kind of a routine, some kind of a pattern where, we're not getting up at 10 o'clock or, going to our computers in our pajamas, or we still need to dress, even if it's only for virtual Zoom calls, half dressed. But we have to dress, because as Kelsey got up, we all noticed she is dressed for the day. She's not wearing pajama bottoms, right? But I think it's important that we maintain our routines, or create new ones. when in March, I'm not much of a what's the word? I guess a green thumb, but I started growing with my son, who is interested in growing very hot peppers. We started buying seeds and growing, pepper plants, and it gave me something to do with him for an hour each day that gave me something to do, or started to create a bit of a routine. So, I'd have my meetings in the morning, my Zoom meetings in the afternoon, an hour of recreation, which became indoor gardening. And it kind of gave me structure again. The phone calls with other people, using things that we have at our disposal, Zoom and Facebook and all these other things to maintain that social contact with people. I put structure back in. So I would say that as we go back into more indoor activity, don't forget to put a structure in place for yourself, and ask those questions of your employees as well to make sure that they're getting some R&R. Some of the studies found that people just basically started working 20, whatever number of hours a day, weren't looking after themselves. And I think we have to insist as employers, as other human beings, look, what did you do today for yourself? Where did you go? Were you able to, is there a book that you're reading that's interesting that, maybe I could pick up and read as well? There are things we can do, and whether you're, an 8-year-old with a routine or a 70-year-old, we need to have those routines, and we need, appropriate activities to ensure that the day is full of activity and that our minds are occupied and not, constantly listening. And that's the other thing too, is turn off the damn TV. You can't sit in front of that thing and listen to it and not start getting, anxious or depressed. So limit the amount of news that you take in so that you can focus on living your life, as opposed to, pausing it until something changes.
Yeah, those are excellent tips. Thank you so much for that, for sharing that.
I have to go to a conference. I could do another one at 10:30, so I've got to leave. There's one question I have to ask Kelsey because of something that came up yesterday from the registered psychotherapist. I was a keynote speaker last night at one of their events, and they talked about insurance, and they specifically asked the question whether structured psychotherapists, licensed psychotherapists, whether they are included as service providers, and if they're not, is there an opportunity to discuss with the insurance industry the ability of them becoming service providers? Because again, from the standpoint of being able to build a spectrum of services, they're critical for the province. And I don't know if you can answer the question. If you want to offline have a conversation with me, I'd love to know. And I'd like to work and perhaps introduce you to the president to have a discussion about that, because I think it'd be very worthwhile and give us more of an arsenal of service providers to help people.
For sure. And it's definitely an ongoing conversation that has been ongoing for a couple of years, because traditionally they weren't included as the list of services. And I know as we're moving forward, some insurance companies are adding them on to their list of services. So it's moving in the right direction, which is great.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about that.
I'll have Lorena catch up with you. I'll get your number, Karen, and perhaps I'll introduce you to the president so you guys can have a conversation, and I'd love to be part of that. I have to go. I really don't want to. You guys are all great. I appreciate all the incredible work that you're doing, looking to find ways to help the people of the province. Our businesses are critical to the success of the province. So God bless you for the work you do. Stay focused, keep doing what you're doing, because we're going to get through this, and we want our businesses to survive, not just survive, thrive, even in a pandemic, and be there for the future of the province. So thank you. God bless you all. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Minister Tabolo, for joining us. And thank you also, Chelsea, for taking that question. And maybe this is something that the chambers can support and try to move forward. I also just want to pause and say I myself started quilting again. I had started quilting 20 years ago. and stopped when I had kids. So it only took a pandemic to get me going again. But those are the things I think that, as the minister was alluding to, that whether that's, indoor gardening, quilting, baking sourdough bread. I know that stores were out of all sorts of stuff with yeast and everything. So, those things are great tips. And I really enjoyed the conversation today. I want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our speakers. The information was amazing, so helpful. And obviously there's a lot of leadership opportunities for business owners to take care of this issue of mental wellness and a mental wellness culture in the workplace. If you would like any additional information, we are going to be sending a follow-up email with the recording of the session and the presenter materials. And I know both Ashley and Chelsea have their contact information in their materials, so you can follow up with them directly. And I also wanted to just say that we have a really great session coming up on October 15th with John Stackhouse, Senior Vice President of the Royal Bank of Canada. And he'll be sharing the insights from their research called Small Business Big Pivot. So we're looking forward to that. And with that, I would just like to close it off and again thank our speakers. Such great information, and for the attendees, please follow up with them directly or use the resources they shared. It was great information. Thanks everybody, stay well, and thank you again for sharing your time and experience with us.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.